Story 1. I worked with a guy in construction who was gregarious and loud. We did a job out of town and shared rented living quarters. When I got up at 5:30 in the morning to make breakfast, I would find him already in the kitchen drinking white rum straight from the bottle. He would be chugging as if he had found a water bottle after 3 days in the desert. I felt like that was a sign. Story 2. I never went to work drunk or drank at work. I knew how long it would take to drink a 12-pack every night and still get enough sleep. On my days off, if my eyes were open, I was drinking. I still paid my bills and kept my house clean. I was functioning. Story 3. Your hobby is drinking. You are either at work or drinking. Alcohol is how you spend your free time. If you have a family, you work, do only the required parenting, or drink. You plan outings, events, and your schedule around when you can get home and drink. My dad was a functioning alcoholic. He was a hard worker and provided for us. We never wanted for anything. He was there when we needed him, but only when it was absolutely necessary. If it was an event he did not have to attend, he did not go, even if we would have liked him to. If our mother could handle it, he let her. I loved him very much, and I know he loved me. I feel it in my soul. But he was a functioning alcoholic who always had one foot in the house with us and one foot in the garage with his beer. In his mind, this was a step up from how he was raised, and I understand that more as I get older. Story 4. They know the hours of every liquor store in town and rotate their visits so no clerk sees them too often. Story 5. Today I learned I was a functioning alcoholic for the past year. I would go to work, pay bills, and be a responsible adult in all things, but after work and on days off I would drink. I would slam 4 rum and cokes after work to get a buzz that would last until bedtime. On days off I would start around 2 p.m. and pass out around 10 p.m. I think my anxiety finally worked in my favor, and I convinced myself I would die if I did not stop drinking. I have been booze-free for 43 days so far, and the urges are getting fewer now. Edit. I want to thank everyone for their kind words and the awards. I love you all. Today I learned that there are also addiction gatekeepers. To you, I wish you all the best. Addiction is addiction, and going through a 1 3/4 liter bottle of Admiral Nelson's every few days is as much addiction as going through one every 2 days or one a week. Help a person up instead of holding them down. Story 6. Years ago, I worked in a grocery store. At one point, I was assigned to condition shelves, which meant lining up products so they looked fuller, disposing of empty cardboard flats, and picking up items customers had abandoned. I kept finding empty mini vodka bottles on the shelves. I mentioned it to the night crew foreman, and he said, "Oh yeah, one of my guys is a drunk, but he works very hard here every night, so I don't say anything." Story 7. I am a functioning alcoholic. I go to work every day and do not drink on the job, but when I am off work I drink. Drinking is my hobby and how I spend my free time. Story 8. I had a great pal who was my roommate for several years. He was a functioning alcoholic but never missed work. I left the apartment to celebrate Mother's Day with my family. He was supposed to do the same. He stopped at a bar on his way to his parents' house, stayed there all day, and skipped the visit. He died at 56. Story 9. Spending a lot of time at home, disappearing during outings and then showing back up, avoiding close contact with people, avoiding hugs or hugging with their head turned away, a red puffy face, using the bathroom at home for a very long time, only running errands when a spouse or roommate leaves the house, finding hidden alcohol whether consumed or not, always having a specific soda or drink as a chaser, being overconfident about driving after a night out drinking with others, avoiding the topic of alcohol because of shame, not remembering things you have discussed many times, being sweaty all the time, getting irritable, and ready to go home if stuck somewhere for more than an hour, being jumpy and irritable in the mornings until the first drink, and refusing to go on any long-distance trip without a designated place to drink. I know these things because they were all true for me. I drank on the job as well. I was considered a high-functioning alcoholic because of how much I drank. About 30 to 40 drinks per day for 9 years. I decided to go to rehab about 3 months ago. Tomorrow is my 100th day of sobriety. If anyone struggles with alcohol or thinks they may have a problem, my direct messages are open. One day at a time, friends. Story 10. They have rules about their drinking that they claim prove they are not an alcoholic. Story 11. For me, I needed to have a drink every morning or I would feel sick. Drinking alone frequently is another indicator. I was drunk for most of my undergraduate years. I remember being at a career fair. Everyone was lined up and dressed up, while I walked past them after walking several miles in my pajamas to get more alcohol. I also had constant tremors even when I had a few drinks. It took about 6 months to a year of not drinking for the tremors to stop. From college into my mid-20s, I could not hold my hands straight. An alcoholic often tries to justify their drinking, downplaying the amount. My friends thought I was going to die early from drinking too much. I will be 6 years sober in a few months, and I am much better for it. Story 12. Hey, original poster. I am a 48-year-old married father of 2 in the United Kingdom. I gave up drinking last year because it was one way or the other going to kill me. The reason I drank, the core unchangeable reason, was to change my mood and emotions to try and feel better. You can probably imagine how well that worked. If a person is using alcohol to manage their emotions, then that, to me, is a sign of dependence. However, how another person determines that is hard to define. Since I gave up alcohol and have used only therapy and medication to manage my negative emotions, it feels like I am playing life on easy mode. Shout out to the Reddit community Stop Drinking. Story 13. There is a functional alcoholism specific to the Army in the United States in my experience, and I was no stranger to it when I drank regularly. At its height, I would have any of the following between 5 and 10 p.m. For double drinks on ice, 2 tall bottles of high-alcohol beer, or half a bottle of wine. I told myself the usual Army lies, that I did not have a problem because I wanted to drink rather than needed to. I did not drink while deployed. I did not come to work drunk. The wine or beer went well with dinner. I still exercised twice a day and ran 4 to 6 miles most days. I drank slowly over 5 hours, and most of my peers did the same. This was not uncommon for my generation of soldiers. Behavioral health stigma was slowly reduced near the end of my career, but most of us self-medicated, doing severe chemical damage to our bodies to cope with anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and general heartache. I would get up early for physical training, drink coffee, and use nicotine, spend the day on caffeine and nicotine, go home and start drinking around dinner because it was off time, pass out intoxicated, and repeat. A lot of us spent weekends doing physically intense activities like hiking and fun runs, then spent the late afternoon and evening getting very drunk. My favorite anecdote is something Tom Waits said: "You don't become a star for the lifestyle. The lifestyle is waiting there when you show up." The lifestyle was definitely waiting for us. It was cultural. After my divorce, which is common for many career soldiers, I decided to do the opposite of what seemed normal and quit drinking altogether for a long time. I've had a few drinks since then, but becoming someone who drinks rarely rather than regularly has been very rewarding on all levels. Therapy is great, if you can go. Story 14. Vodka. Vodka is often the end game for someone with severe alcohol dependence. By volume, it is the least expensive way to stay inebriated. It is clear and can be concealed in other containers. Its smell resembles hand sanitizer, and people sometimes try to mask it with cologne or breath mints, but perspiration can reveal it. A person may appear to pass a field sobriety test while still having a high blood alcohol concentration. Story 15. I work in substance abuse, and there are some good indicators, but some are definitely missing. The alcoholic bathroom smell. I cannot describe it, but people with alcohol use disorder often have diarrhea, and the smell they leave behind in the bathroom is unique. I grew up with it and have smelled it a couple of times since. Leathery skin. More advanced alcohol use disorder, whether functioning or not, can cause skin that looks very leathery, especially on the legs and arms. I would almost describe it as pickled. The beer gut does not just come from beer. There are very few conditions that cause a distended stomach like alcohol. A beer gut almost always suggests heavy alcohol use when paired with thin arms and legs. They will always leave on time. A functioning person with alcohol use disorder has a schedule to keep and will not let anything interfere with it. Work done at 5? So are they. They have plans they cannot miss. Detoxing from alcohol can be very dangerous to do on your own. Please seek medical attention if you decide to stop drinking so you do not seize or die. I always say only two detoxes will kill you: alcohol and benzodiazepines. The rest will just make you wish you were dead. Story 16. The whole street can hear the glass recycling bin being emptied. Story 17. My father is a working alcoholic. He has been so throughout my 53 years of life. He is 76 and makes excuses for his drinking. My late mother was also an alcoholic. She died in 2018 from a damaged liver. Story 18. My ex-girlfriend would not eat lunch because she wanted to save the calories for beer later. Story 19. We'll have an excuse for not visiting or taking calls after a certain hour. Stomach and digestion issues or frequent illness. Overeating or undereating. Too many excuses for seemingly innocent behavior. Sudden bursts of communication punctuated by long periods of inactivity. Story 20. I am a functioning alcoholic and my entire family are the same. I will jump at any chance to go for a drink, especially if it is free. At after-work drinks, I will drink wine like it is water. Other than the actual drinking, mood swings are a giveaway. Story 21. A functional alcoholic must be a very good liar, able to manipulate others into believing they are okay and have everything under control. I had a friend who was clearly an alcoholic, but somehow he made everyone believe he had it under control despite his concerning behavior. We never had a serious conversation about getting him help. On the outside, he had a pretty good life, well-liked socially and always surrounded by friends. He ended up taking his life. To this day, no one knows why. They found him with a blood alcohol level twice the lethal limit. My therapist said it was likely the alcoholism, maybe the guilt from all the lies or being unable to stop. I don't know. Story 22. I went to the doctor a few months ago and he asked me how much I drink. I told him somewhere around 4 or 5 drinks and he looked at me in disbelief. You mean a day? And I thought to myself, good thing I did not tell him how much I really drink. Story 23. You need to drink alcohol to have a good time at family functions or at any other time. You try to hide how much you drink and conceal injuries or damage to property. All of this is my mom. Story 24. I lived with a functional alcoholic, my ex, for 10 years. He was great at his job, had lots of friends, and seemed healthy and successful, but his life revolved around drinking. Socializing always took place at a bar, a party, or somewhere alcohol was available. Weeknights often began with a stop at a bar on the way home from work since we lived in a lively neighborhood with good public transportation. So at least there was no drunk driving. Then he would visit his regular bar or have drinks at home. Weekends were about day drinking opportunities such as brunch, watching sports, and tabletop games that eventually lost structure and turned into straight drinking until bedtime. We met in our 20s when most of our social circle drank heavily, and it was carefree for a few years. Drinking was fun. Everyone we knew did it, and some people drank more, used cocaine, or indulged in other vices. There was always an excuse. Had a good day? Have a drink. Had a bad day? Need a drink. If the sports team did well, drink. People even used events as excuses to drink, for example Danish Independence Day. It became a game to normalize drinking in unusual situations. There were breakfast beers on weekends and holidays, shower beers, road beers for car passengers, and bus beers for commuters. Eventually, many of us, including me, started to slow down, but he kept going. I do not think he went a day without a drink. His standard order escalated from a beer to a beer and a shot, then to a beer and 2 shots. Friends who stayed over reported seeing him first thing in the morning with a mug full of wine that he tried to pass off as coffee. I went through a cocktail phase and tried to set up a bar cart, but gave up because any liquor in the house was gone within a few days. We were given nice bottles of alcohol as gifts, and I never even got a chance to taste them. He was usually cheerful and gregarious with others, but with me he was moody until he had a few drinks. I found myself waiting for that first can or bottle because it meant the grouchy side would go away and the friendly person would return. Our sex life suffered. It got worse over time. He began getting injured in drinking-related incidents but still showed up for work every day and received excellent performance reviews. The turning point for me was a night when friends carried him home. By that point, he was going to the bar most evenings without me. He was incoherent, unable to stand on his own, and his face and shirt were covered in blood. No one was sure what happened, but people thought he had tripped on a stair and hit his head. He did not remember anything the next day. He tried to stop drinking after that, but it did not last. We split up. His new partner is a bartender, which sounded like trouble, but he has reportedly been sober for a few years now. Thankfully. Story 25. Their friends are never sure how bad they are, but they are trying to create a scale to decide. Story 26. They are reading this thread to prove to themselves that they are not so bad. Story 27. They often drink alone rather than in social settings, and they can consume large amounts of alcohol without showing obvious signs of intoxication. Story 28. My friend was the loveliest, most competent and professional person I ever worked with. He also could not be well without 6 beers a night. We tried for fun to see if he could abstain from drinking for one evening. He could not. He is now getting support to abstain properly. He is in a different place in his life and acknowledges that he is an alcoholic. Story 29. Having worked in places that sell alcohol, the first thing that stands out is that functioning alcoholics usually buy shots rather than big bottles if they are buying early in the day. They use shots to ration their drinking while working so they do not get drunk at work. The big bottles are usually purchased right after work. As a spouse, I noticed the increased drinking through our bank account first. I began to see multiple charges on most days at different convenience stores, some of which were nowhere near home or work. I figured out my husband had traded his weekly 6-pack of beer for a habit of multiple vodka shots per day. Other clues appeared. I started finding bottles he had tried to hide in the trash, but because he was drunk, he was not very good at hiding them. I realized he went to different stores on different days, thinking he would not look like an alcoholic to the clerks who work there every day. For your information, they know. It is hard to hide when the trips become more frequent and you start going to the same store every day. It is also hard to hide when you wake up with shakes because your body needs alcohol to function. Alcohol is a powerful drug, and once it has its claws in you, it is hard to escape. Watching from the outside as the person you once knew fades into someone you no longer recognize is heartbreaking and, at some point, just disappointing. For those of you who have made your way out or are working on it, congratulations and best of luck. Story 30. As a recovering alcoholic, I would work to pay bills and make sure responsibilities and priorities were covered before drinking. I would drive to work with a buzz, stop by the gas station to get a 6-pack, then start my shift and drink during work. On my breaks, I would drink 2 beers, and I would drink again on the way home. 6 months sober. I lost my mother 3 weeks ago, and the urges are gradually getting worse, but I have stopped myself several times from picking up a beer. It is hard, but I will get through it. Story 31. If they are functioning and you do not live with them, you probably will not know. They are aware of the signs and actively avoid showing them. They will try to make sure you do not know. Any real signs will have plausible deniability. They may smell minty from gum used to cover morning breath or wear cologne to mask sweat. Many people also simply like to smell good. If you text them after work and they become much more extroverted, happier, or emotional at night, that can be a sign, though they could just be relaxed after work. If you drink with them in person and they are careful not to have more than 1 or 2 drinks while choosing the strongest possible options, that is a calculated appearance. It lets them say they only had 1 drink. A functioning alcoholic will appear like a normal person until they cross the line into severe alcoholism. Then they smell of alcohol, miss work, neglect hygiene, and stop caring what others think. Story 32. If you stand up and sing the national anthem at the Major League Baseball home run derby, is that too soon? This is sarcasm. Story 33. Wine cooler under the desk. When I asked the manager about it, they said, "Oh, it's for her wine. She drinks it all day." I asked, "Is that allowed?" They replied, "Of course not, but you wouldn't want to work with her sober." We left it at that. Story 34. My father is a functional drunk. He drinks beer at noon every weekend. He drinks beer right after work on weekdays. At restaurants, he expects the server to come by immediately to take a drink order and to check for refills frequently. He always drinks more than everyone else. He has little appetite. Story 35. Functional alcoholics often have rules and are dedicated to them. They may recognize they have a problem but are determined not to let it become one. Story 36. Oh hey, I see you calling me out here. I pay all my bills on time. I have a healthy relationship with my husband and my child. Most people would never know I drink 15 to 20 beers every single day and have for about 17 years. I keep a clean home and am always available to the people I love when they need me. If I think I may need to drive or be there for someone, I will absolutely not drink. So far, I have never experienced withdrawal symptoms and have gone as long as 3 weeks without drinking, aside from the period when I was pregnant and until my son was a toddler when I did not drink. I have never had any alcohol-related charges. In fact, I have never had any charges, arrests, or trouble. I have 3 college degrees and I own my home. All of that said, I can say without a doubt that I am an alcoholic and I admit it freely. Edited to add, I am not asking for advice, sympathy, tips, or anything of that nature. I am a retired registered nurse and a combat veteran with chronic leukemia. No one here knows me, my life, or my family. I am not secretive or sneaky. My entire family and all of my friends know I am an alcoholic, but my life does not revolve around alcohol. None of you are telling me anything I do not already know and accept. While I appreciate the good intentions behind your sentiments, I do not want or need advice. I answered the question in the original post. Story 37. As someone who has known many people with alcohol problems, the number one sign someone is actually addicted to alcohol, whether they appear functional or not, is how they interact with alcohol and those around them, especially when alcohol is present. A functional alcoholic will often be the first to suggest drinking, whether or not it is appropriate. They may suggest stopping by a brewpub after a hike or be the coworker at a conference dinner who suggests grabbing a beer while others drink water. They may offer to buy you a drink even if you are not interested. One requirement of functioning while dependent is building an environment where their drinking seems normal, and the best way to do that is to get others to drink. Many put great effort into hiding how much they drink or creating plausible deniability about their consumption. They may pre-game before going out with friends who are not as heavy drinkers. They may create opportunities to refill out of sight so others do not notice, because people do not always keep track, especially when drinking. A key feature of alcohol dependence is an inability to stop once they start. They may say they will have 1 beer because they have to get up early, only to be at last call having had 6 drinks. It is easy to write this off as getting caught up in the moment, but most people follow through on plans when they have a clear goal like getting up early, so repeated failure to stop suggests a problem. There are physical signs. Alcohol, especially at high levels, is destructive. A functional drinker may often have medical issues such as frequent kidney stones, poor dental health, or chronic digestive problems. Issues might begin small but are usually present. Weight gain or loss is common and can be cyclical, as can splotchy facial skin. Mentally, they often have highs and lows. They may appear outgoing and normal at times, then become depressed and withdrawn later in the day. They may struggle to remain on task and have good days and bad days often tied to drinking. At work, they might be someone who scrapes by, never excelling but not overtly failing, or they may be inconsistent. They may be forgetful, have memory lapses, or struggle to understand tasks. They may always carry a water bottle or coffee mug, take sporadic breaks, and make excuses to leave the workplace regularly. Their resume is often spotty, with shorter stints at multiple companies, and they may be vague about their experience. It is important to understand that being a functional alcoholic is, more often than not, a stage rather than a permanent state. In my experience with family members, friends, and coworkers who had alcohol problems, they were functional until they were not or until they sought recovery. For some, the problem worsened after trauma, such as losing a job, a relationship, or housing. For others, it was a cycle. Functioning, deteriorating after an event, a short period of recovery, then returning to function repeatedly. Very few people remain functional drinkers forever. Alcohol dependence is a degenerative condition, and a person's life can become tied to alcohol. That is not conducive to long-term functioning. Story 38. Buddy's girlfriend once commented that it was odd she had never seen me drunk. Everyone laughed because she had only seen me drunk. Story 39. For me, the most important indicator is the honest reason you are drinking. If you drink every day at home and alone, do not fool yourself with justifications such as saying you had a hard day, you worked hard, or you have something to celebrate. You are not fooling others. A clear sign is trying to hide your drinking. People who drink without problems do not feel the need to hide it. If you drink primarily to get drunk, you may have a serious problem. Many young people pass through phases of heavy drinking, but those who do not grow out of it are at high risk of developing alcohol use disorder. If your drinking has significant negative consequences for your life, and you continue despite functioning or obligations because of compulsion or a need to drink, that indicates an alcohol use disorder. Story 40. My mother is a prime example of a self-rehabilitating addict. When I was younger, she used to leave for long periods. I recently discovered she was getting drunk at the International House of Pancakes during happy hour. She would always come home stumbling and slurring her words. The next day, she would have a migraine and tell me to do everything while she slept. Signs included frequent headaches and kidney stones. Story 41. Their skin usually has an alcohol-like texture. I do not know how to describe it. Story 42. Go back and look at all the pictures of yourself over the last 20 years. What percentage have visible alcohol in them? If it is over 20%, that is a lot. Do you hide alcohol when cameras come out because you have noticed this already? That is a problem. Story 43. They plan their day around getting home and drinking, which means cutting out of family and work events. You hear many last-minute cancellations or silent departures, often called Irish goodbyes. Story 44. While functioning alcoholics may not exhibit obvious signs of intoxication, over time you may notice subtle physical changes such as weight gain or loss, redness of the face, especially the nose and cheeks, and bloodshot eyes. Story 45. Having many alcoholic drinks around the house. Finding hidden bottles. Frequently disappearing or making excuses to run short errands or leaving multiple times. Saying they will be right in or right out, or appearing to lag behind or stay ahead so they can take a drink. Tremors in the morning. A red nose. Telling small, pointless lies. Drinking during the day when most people would not, such as adding alcohol to coffee, drinking several drinks at lunch, or keeping a bottle in the car. Story 46. Knowing when the liquor store closes is one thing. Knowing when it opens is quite another. Story 47. Functioning alcoholic is such a shit term. It downplays something really dangerous. I got sober 2 years ago at the age of 40. I did not always drink heavily, but I have always had a poor relationship with alcohol. I got sober having never lost a job. I had not been arrested, hospitalized, or institutionalized because of drinking. I had a wife, a child, a mortgage, and so on. Getting and staying sober changed my life. I have functioned more in the last 2 years than I did in the previous 20. Story 48. I don't think alcoholic is quite the right word for me. I'm more of a binge drinker. I can go through the week without having a drink. It could be an absolute day from hell, a 9.8 on the stress meter, but when I get home it won't cross my mind to look for a drink, not even to wash the dirt out of my throat. On Friday nights, however, it's a bottle of whiskey, to the point where I will deliberately not plan anything on Saturday mornings to allow recovery. I wish I could stop for all the usual reasons. Story 49. They always seem to be drinking. I knew a functioning alcoholic, my uncle. Every time I saw him, he had a beer in his hand. Once I asked him if he was an alcoholic. He said of course not. I asked if he could stop drinking if he wanted. He said yes, but why would I stop having fun? He had no idea what was wrong with that response. He died from cancer that likely stemmed from his drinking and smoking habits. He died at 55 last year. He was a cool man. He could make some really good food, but he always forgot the recipe because he was so drunk. Story 50. He has to drink every day. Spend a long day with him and plan non-alcoholic activities. See how he copes as the evening progresses. Over time, drinking is likely to take up more of the day, and he may become non-functional. My ex had a rule that he would not drink until 5 o'clock. He eventually could not keep this rule, was unable to work, and began hallucinating. He was not able to become sober despite treatment. Story 51. They surround themselves with friends who permit them to drink too much and are probably functioning alcoholics. Story 52. You scroll quickly past this post so as not to read all the telltale signs you are already showing. Fuck. Story 53. I dated someone who was a functioning alcoholic, and I have stories. The thing I noticed most was that he actively avoided anything that did not involve drinking. He would not hold my hand, or cuddle on the couch because he had to be propped up for his next shot. He blacked out every single night. He needed multiple shots before he drove to work at 6 a.m. He had to drink before family outings, before friends came over, before dates, before going to the grocery store, and before almost any social interaction. He avoided responsibilities like walking the dogs, cleaning up the messes he made while drunk, or even taking a shower because it would take him away from the bottle for 10 minutes. Most of our time was spent going to the liquor store, arguing about the liquor store, arguing while he was drunk, or arguing about trying to cut back. He was terribly sad to watch because I knew him before he went down this hole. He had been kind, sweet, funny, genuine, and the type of person who thought of others first. Alcohol ruined him. He became a shell. I did not know who he was. Everything he said felt like a lie, and everything he did seemed to have a hidden motive. He was selfish, uncaring, and his feelings and thoughts were the only ones that mattered in any conversation. Communicating with him was impossible. He was angry, violent, and mean. He said the worst things I have ever heard to my face. He scared me most days. Some days I thought he might kill me. Some days I secretly wished he would get into a car crash so maybe he would stop. I did not know his personality anymore. I never knew if he was being unfaithful. He acted strange. I did not know what he liked or disliked, what made him laugh. He made me feel like an inconvenience, like something in the corner of the room. He stopped eating and rarely drank water. He was constantly sick from excessive drinking, too skinny, and his skin and face looked wrong. Then, after a major incident during a drinking binge that almost cost him me, his home, his dogs, his friends, and his family's respect, he really messed up. He has been sober for almost a year. I completely believe that some force, however you name it, brought this to pass exactly when it needed to happen. He would never have gotten better otherwise. There were many times I considered leaving, but I stayed, and I am glad I did because I got the man I had a crush on since the day I met him. Sober, he is everything. He is loving and caring. He gives the shirt off his back for other people. He loves sweets. He is the homemaker. He cleans, cooks, decorates, and cares for the dogs. I never lift a finger. He is funny and silly. He can communicate his feelings in a healthy and calm way. He has a big, loud personality. He remembers things about me, little things I do not even notice. He knows my favorite things before I tell him. He is the weirdest person I have ever met in the best way. He stands out in a room now. People want to know him because he glows. I would not have known how deeply and genuinely he cared for me if he had not gotten sober. We would not be talking about getting engaged if he had not changed. I would never have known because alcohol always came first. This got a bit on the side, but the point is this. Alcohol is the scariest thing I have encountered, and I have known and loved people with many kinds of addiction. Alcohol is terrifying because it is legal, convenient, and everywhere. This addiction ruins families and lives. It almost ruined mine. I will forever have trauma from what I endured while loving someone who was an alcoholic. If you are reading this and are currently a functioning alcoholic or a loving one, be safe. If someone is unwilling to see what they are putting you through or shows no willingness to change, please seek help. If you are having things thrown at you, if objects are thrown in your direction, if you are being slammed against walls, hit, punched, thrown to the ground, choked, threatened with self-harm or harm to your belongings, verbally abused, emotionally manipulated, gaslight, or subjected to public outbursts, it is abuse. It is common for them not to realize what they are doing because they black out. Please seek help. Even telling one person can ground you and help you think logically about the situation your loved one is putting you in. Loving a functioning alcoholic was the hardest thing I have ever done. Staying was the hardest thing I have ever done. Even though we are one of the rare cases that came out the other side with a happy ending, I was still very damaged in the process. Story 54. From the perspective of someone witnessing a functioning alcoholic in the workplace, not retaining information and needing to be shown tasks several times before they are learned, even simple tasks. Sloppy workmanship and inconsistent quality. Unexplained absences. Alcohol on the breath in the morning and after lunch. Gaps in stories, often omitting that they were very intoxicated. Good income but still not making ends meet. Barely eats. Story 55. When a person's drunk and sober personalities are polar opposites. Story 56. Getting up to go to work but binge drinking from finishing time until bedtime. Binge drinking all day one day, skipping the next, then repeating the cycle. Story 57. My dad can drink 3 bottles of wine or several shots of whiskey and wake up the next morning and go straight to work. He's in his 60s. I don't know how he does it. Story 58. I drink liquor every night. I go to work every day. Some days are harder than others, but a hangover or 100 don't hold a candle to the long-term effects I feel and see. For me, it is the skin. I see it in myself and in other people. I can hide the empties like I'm Batman, but everyone who knows can see my cratered face from alcohol abuse. I hate it and myself. What are we going to do at this point? Story 59. I went on a week-long bender a year ago to celebrate my birthday and other family milestones. The weekend after, I felt like an absolute husk of a man and decided to take a week off drinking to recover. I found it really hard, declining after-work drinks, eyeing the ciders on the shelves whenever I went into a shop, and thinking about having a drink when I was alone were all difficult. That was a wake-up call that my relationship with alcohol was unhealthy, so I decided to extend the week to try to break the habit. After 388 days, I feel great, and I do not think I will be going back. Story 60. One of my least favorite and most frightening things about my husband's alcoholism was him calculating how much alcohol he would need for a night, a trip, a weekend, and so on. We went to a sports game with $1 beer night. There were 6 of us. They allowed you to take 8 beers at a time per person if you could carry them. At the time, maybe 3 in the group were heavier drinkers. We were standing in line when one of my friends asked what we should order. He immediately said they should get 42 because we would find something to do with them. I persuaded him to buy only 20 so the beer would not get warm, but I remember feeling mortified and embarrassed having that conversation in front of our friends. His initial argument was that there was no point to $1 beer night if we did not get as many as we could. I was fortunate that they were close friends and have since supported his journey to sobriety, because that moment had felt so defeating and heartbreaking. He is going on 10 months sober. I am incredibly proud of him. Story 61. They always carry a pack of Hall's cough lozenges even when they do not have a cold. I have worked with many intoxicated people and noticed this. Story 62. They have bad skin, are often out of shape, and are frequently ill. They do not eat much and are unavailable after work hours. They barely get by at work. They make rules to justify that they are not an alcoholic, but they break them frequently. Story 63. They need to have a beer every day, and 3 are much better than 1. Story 64. If someone is a functioning alcoholic, you will not know about it, and they will definitely not tell you. Story 65. When I got my driver's license at 16 and my grandmother came over, my mother always made me the driver whenever we went out. It took me a couple of years to realize it was because my grandmother always had liquor on her breath. Story 66. They are flaky and reluctant to make plans. If they do agree to do things, they always have a reason to leave after a few hours. They seem to have erratic sleep patterns. They fall asleep and miss plans they made or fail to follow through on things they said they would do, such as calling or texting. Either they are drinking every time you see them, or you never see them drinking. They may frequently leave the room, use the bathroom, or go outside for air to drink privately, hiding how much they consume. Story 67. Hi. I'm the problem. Look at me. Day drinking and making drinking a hobby are my biggest issues. There may be more, Story 68. My breath still smells like alcohol in the morning at work, but they do not know. Story 69. We are very good at what we do in short bursts and then quiet for long periods. Not bad, just less good. Story 70. If you call them after 8 in the evening, they do not remember talking to you, but if you call them at 8 in the morning, they are all business. Love you, Mom. Story 71. My sister was a high-functioning alcoholic. She drank most days after work and on weekends, worked full-time, and was active, fit, stylish, motivated, and hardworking. Her house was tidy, and she appeared to have it together if you spent only a short time with her. She died suddenly from liver cirrhosis. She did not show obvious signs of deterioration such as jaundice or prolonged hospitalization. Her liver failed, which caused electrolyte imbalances, and she died of sudden cardiac arrest. She did not have many signs except a few that were mostly behavioral and mood-related. She was very labile, with mood swings that made people feel they had to walk on eggshells around her. There was significant intimate partner violence in private. She was both perpetrator and victim. She made self-destructive decisions while drinking, such as overspending and infidelity. Her mood and behavior caused relationship breakdowns with partners and loved ones. She engaged in general risk-taking and impulsive behavior. In the months before her death, she experienced sudden weight loss. She had always been thin, 5 feet 7 inches and 110 to 120 pounds because of genetics and running, but she dropped to 95 pounds. Story 72. Unfortunately, there are no true hard and fast telltale signs, short of bearing a vodka bottle under the car seat, until it catches up with them, such as driving under the influence, falls, or liver failure. If you are suspicious and care for them, consider asking in the kindest way possible, offering support and without judgment. Story 73. If you see them chugging water all morning, I drank half of a fifth of whiskey almost every night for at least 10 years. I was functional, but I was insulated from consequences because I worked second shift. When I changed careers and began working days, I had to stop drinking because I felt awful in the morning. I quit drinking. That was about 2 years ago. Story 74. I hired a woman to manage one of our teams. She was kind and genuine and had a strong CV. A few months in, I received complaints from junior team members that she was not doing anything and did not know how to structure work or manage them. At that stage, it seemed odd. I noticed she was often very late and called in sick a day or two every week. I sat with her and reviewed some of her tasks. She could not follow complex processes, structure a spreadsheet, or determine what needed to be done. It was genuinely strange, as if her thinking stopped when something complex or original was required. One day she joked about being single and drinking wine on her days off on the sofa, and it became clear to me. I think she was frequently intoxicated or hungover. I believe she thought she was coping and fully functioning when she was not. It was a sad situation. Story 75. You have a time you wait for every day that allows you to start drinking, for example 3p, 4p, or 5p. My parents are long-term functioning alcoholics, and my mother always started drinking at 4p. On the dot. They did not drink during the day or at work, but once they started they did not stop until they were very drunk. She would try to pretend she had not been waiting for it and say, well, it is 4p. I guess it is okay to have a glass of wine now. Then she would laugh nervously and pour herself a giant glass of Chardonnay. Story 76. Watch their eyes when they first walk into a restaurant, reception, networking event, or any place where alcohol is served. Just as some people instinctively find the bathroom or the nearest exit when entering an establishment, an alcoholic's eyes will go straight to the bar. When you are sitting at a table or at the bar, watch their eyes again. An alcoholic's gaze will drift toward the bartender or server. Even if they are not ready for another drink, they need to reassure themselves that the person who will provide the drink is accessible and ready to serve when called upon. As for physical features beyond obvious signs such as a beer gut, look at the face. An alcoholic's face often has a lot of redness, especially around the nose, and may have large red, puffy cheeks. An alcoholic will talk about drinking and being drunk in settings where they are unlikely to be challenged, casually inserting statements like, yes, I was hammered, laughing out loud into a normal conversation with friends. This is the alcoholic brain seeking validation. Instinctively, an alcoholic often knows their behavior is wrong, but if they admit it in settings where nobody will express concern, they can tell themselves, "See, I do not have a problem. My friends think my stories are funny." Source: I am an alcoholic, 18 months alcohol-free. Story 77. My younger brother, who was 50, died of alcohol-related liver failure in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. He had always been a heavy drinker, yet he was a functioning information technology professional. He was smart, funny, well-loved by everyone who knew him, the life of the party. He lived in Alabama and I lived in Indiana. For the last 10 years of his life, I did not pick up the phone if he called after 8 p.m. His wife was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's in 2016, and her illness unhinged him. The last long visit we had together was Thanksgiving 2019. One morning I got up at 6 a.m. and found him drinking vodka from the freezer like it was water. That was the first time I noticed the whites of his eyes were starting to yellow. Things escalated in early 2020. Many hospital stays and many calls from his wife at all hours. We were grateful to have groceries delivered to their house because she could not drive, and I was thankful she could still get me on the phone. An ambulance was called on April 17, 2020, and the outlook was poor. My husband and I drove to Alabama to pick up his wife and bring her home. We found 2 gallons of vodka in the freezer and countless empty bottles. Over the next week, there was some improvement and we hoped he would be released. We even spoke to him on the phone a couple of times. Then he began accumulating fluid and developed organ failure. A heartbreaking shock followed when he was released to hospice. We rented a recreational vehicle and drove from Indiana to pick him up so he would not die alone. The ambulance had been quoted at $7,000, but the RV trip was a nightmare. 20 hours of driving without sleep, he was uncomfortable and yelling, and loading and unloading him was exhausting. I wish we had just paid for the ambulance. He lived just under a week and died in my living room, his skin yellow from jaundice. It was tragic. His wife lived with us for a year before we had to place her in a nursing facility. She died in 2022. Sadly, my 35-year-old daughter is following in his footsteps. Vodka is her drink of choice and she consumes a lot of it. She has unresolved trauma. The love of her life suffered a traumatic brain injury in 2016 after stepping off a retaining wall at a wedding venue and falling 20 feet. His personality changed and they split up. Her sister, also my daughter, died in a car accident in 2006. They were best friends. I suspect she has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. She has 2 boys, aged 15 and 10, and I fear for them and what may come. A couple of years ago, she spent 10 days in a rehab facility in Florida, but did not follow through with the treatment plan when she returned home. She was arrested for driving under the influence a couple of years ago. Her breath test showed a blood alcohol level 2.5 times the legal limit. Yet she could carry on a conversation as if nothing was wrong. I am terrified all the time and feel helpless. I have tried talking to her, but I risk her cutting off contact with me if I push too hard. Her father is little help. These are 2 examples of functioning alcoholics from my experience. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.